share a bit more about yourself?
So how far do you want me to go back?
I guess I saw that you went to biomedical courses. You have back in.
Yeah, so I'll try to stay high level on this. So yeah, I went to University of Wisconsin-Madison for engineering. I actually went in as pre-med, but did an engineering degree because I really liked, the math and things, and I wanted to have options. Got through school there and slowly was pulled more and more towards industry as I got involved with student organizations and industry relations in that student org. But got my bachelor's in biomedical engineering with an emphasis in tissues and materials. And right out of school wanted to do a rotational program or something. Maybe stay local because my fiance was still going to school at the same school. So got a job as an engineer at a medical device company, but it was mostly molding and plastics and extrusion. Spent a couple of years there doing various manufacturing, engineering, project management roles. And then I moved to a company here in the Minneapolis area for two reasons. One, my fiance graduated and she was working at this company and I was impressed by them. And two, it's Minneapolis, St. Paul. If you want to be in med device, which I did, being pre-med with background and engineering, wanted to be at near all the tier ones here, all the Medtronics, Boston Scientific, etc. So came here, worked at a small contract developing and manufacturing company called Minitronics, kind of like Minnesota. And that was a 200, 300 person company. I did engineering there, focused mostly on the operations side for a couple of years, and then was pulled into sales. As we grew as a company, we needed more salespeople. And I was in a customer facing role at the time, still technical, but they said, hey, are you interested in going to the dark side? And so I said, yeah, that sounds like something that I haven't gone into, something that would be, kind of round myself off as an industry professional, work on the soft skills side, since, as an engineer and going through a college program, you get a lot of the hard skills covered, but you don't get a lot of the intangibles, the sales process, the marketing, the outbound part of it. So moved into sales, and then through my network, through the industry, it's a small world in med device. It's a surprisingly small world. Found out about OpSense, a company that was exciting, built on a foundation of a very interesting technology that applies to all industries, but had focused specifically on med device. And they were looking for a business development director, and it was a good career opportunity for me to move up and have more responsibility, but also to move from the contract side of the business into the OEM side. More working at a company that has its own products versus working for a company that just develops and manufactures for other companies, which that's exciting because you get to see a lot and work with a lot of companies. But being, I hadn't had this experience.
Feeling like you're in your home, like this is your product, this is what you sell.
That's right. Yeah. So it was checked a lot of boxes, and so.
What were the main differences between when you were working for others and OpSense? Like, what did you see as main differences between these two?
I would say, the biggest difference is, so the companies I was working for before were private, and we're public. So that in and of itself is a big difference in how you function as a company, what you're looking for in your financial results. And I would say, the sizes were similar. OpSense were 200 to 300 people, and so was Minitronics. So from that perspective, from the culture, it felt similar. I mean, you're all developing medical devices. It's teams of engineers and program managers, and the management structure is similar. And so there are a lot of parallels, but you have you have your own product. So there's a different sales process happening. You're selling to hospitals. You're having to think about clinical studies. You're having to think about the regulatory side more seriously. So it's different, but it's you're seeing different parts of the medical device development and commercialization process. So I'd say that's the biggest difference, really.
If I understand correctly, like as I was working also as a contract manufacturer, we didn't, like you said, the regulatory is something that we didn't deal with much. We were dealing with the development, but now you have to face all the aspects of the products. Is that what you mean? Like
Yeah. I mean, you're having to think about everything, and sure, we still leverage partners, right? We don't do everything from pellet to finished device. But yes, you are responsible as the medical device OEM for the submission to the FDA and other regulatory bodies for the clinical studies, and are you doing them for regulatory purposes or doing them for marketing purposes? And then there's the KOL and advisory board and physician side of things, which at a contract company you don't see that part of it. And then you're also doing all the other stuff. You're doing engineering, that you're manufacturing it, doing finished device and sterilization and everything. So yes, it's a much more broad view of it. But we are working with, I shouldn't say we do it all ourselves. We're working with partners to do these individual parts to some degree, because a company of 200 or 300 people, with the growth goals we have, we're never going to be able to hit this huge growth curve without leveraging good partners.
It's what I heard also, is like usually companies that have ideas try to go to contract manufacturers to not have to deal with the development, and then they try to get regulatory experts and etc. to do. But from what you're saying, it seems like Upsense is kind of dealing with everything, but still hiring like the consultants. But it seems really exciting. Like you see from A to Z. Like you're saying, like I was not necessarily involved with the clinical or the preclinical in the contract manufacturing, but you get to see more closely all of this, right?
Yeah, and it's always an interesting decision point. What do you contract out or use consultants for, and what do you do yourself?
Yep.
Opsense, it's not. It feels like a kind of a startup-y med device company where we have just one, soon to be two products in our bag. But it's a company that started in the early 2000s as a technology company, and it kind of grew slowly and safely and organically for many years. And through that process, we didn't outsource a lot. We were like, we can do it ourselves, we master our own destiny. But now we've built the platform technology, we've built a solid first product, and we're coming with a new one that's novel in its indication and novel in the way that it's entering the market, as a multi-tool for structural heart for TAVR. And now we think the time is right to really ramp, and we're realizing now, I think, you can't do that alone. You need good partners who have already built to scale, are used to working with the big irons, and kind of latch onto the right ones to help you grow really quickly, because it's a heavy lift. And honestly, Quebec City's small. It's not like we have thousands and thousands of people to bring in as direct labor and more engineers and stuff. It's a small community there. Part of the reason why we came to the Minneapolis-St. Paul area was for that global expansion as well, and to find good partners to work with here.
Yeah, because the timing is also difficult. I assume that is the same a bit in the US, but finding resources and the shortages in parts and all this, does this affect you guys as much as the rest of the medtech world?
Yeah, it definitely does. I think I don't think anybody is unaffected by the current state of markets. Unemployment is really low, which, it's good to see. You don't want to see lots of unemployed people, but it does present a challenge, both on the engineering side of things. The whole thing, engineering, direct labor management, it's kind of the whole, the pool is small of unemployed people, and competition between companies to acquire good talent is as competitive as it's ever been, So I say HR for everybody. I think HR and supply chain are maybe the two biggest challenges for people right now because global supply chains are in a bit of disarray, and then the labor pool is how it is in this post-COVID world.
It is. Going back a little bit to your path, to your journey,
Mm-hmm.
do you feel like what you learned at school, because you had a bit of an atypical path, which is really great, like pre-med really got you into the medicine part of it. Do you feel like what you learned in school prepared you for the medtech world? You've been through 3 companies of the medtech world.
Mm-hmm.
Did you feel like you got all the tools you needed to do these 3 challenges or these 3 companies?
I think school prepared me well. It prepared me well to be an engineer because it did. Madison had a really good engineering program, and especially the student org side of things helped me prepare because you get, like I said, a lot of the hard skills when you go to class. But industry, and I think this applies both if you become a doctor and if you become an engineer or a manager or a sales guy, it requires a lot of soft skills, a lot of work in soft skills, and that effective communication and some of the political aspects of industry. You don't necessarily learn that in school. So I always advise anybody, as an engineer or whatever you're going to school for, to make sure that you're complementing those hard skills you're learning in class with student orgs and things outside. I mean, even intramural sports, like just learning how to effectively communicate, learning how to work as a team. But back to answer your original question, I'd say yes. It prepared me well to be an engineer and a project manager. And then, from there, you don't stop learning. I mean, if anything, you start to learn. You have to learn more rapidly because you're entering a world where there's people with 1 year experience and people you're working with 30 years of experience. And you're kind of tossed into the fire. I did really think that, industry was going to be the thing to expand me, right? To make me a more whole individual, and it really was. It taught me all those stuff. So I think we should focus more on that in college early.
I think the takeaway from your share is that you learn all the hard skill in school, but you need to do the extra, not work, the extra actually fun outside of studying to actually develop the soft skills, right?
Yeah, and so
important.
you have to be a little more, pick yourself up by your bootstraps, kind of, because you're not forced to do it.
No.
You're forced to go to class, get good grades, pass the tests, and get your degree. But to build out those other skills, you have to be proactive.
Yeah. No, that's a great advice, I think. If I could grant you a wish, you've been through 3 companies. What is the biggest flaw? Not necessarily a flaw. What is the thing that you would like to see change in the medtech industry?
That's a great question.
It's a big one, huh?
It's a big question. I would say, the biggest thing. I think the frustrating thing for me immediately was the paperwork. I mean, you come out of school and you're like, I'm going to design medical devices. And you go in and you want to just go 100 miles an hour and you want to design stuff and you want to iterate and prototype and see the projects come out. But there's a lot of gates. There's design reviews and there's the paperwork. There's the waiting for the regulatory side of things with the FDA or with regulatory bodies, and MDR right nowadays has been a really big struggle.
Yep.
But it's dangerous to say, I wish it was way faster, because it's important. There's a reason why all these things are in place. There's a reason why you need to do the clinical studies and the design work and the requirements and the summative, informative, and all this stuff up front, because these devices are affecting people in a deep way. I mean, they're potentially life-saving, a lot of them, or life-sustaining. And either way, I wouldn't want a medical device used on me that was rushed to market. So, I think at I think there's a balance though. I think at the large organizations, there's maybe too much structure. There's too much red tape, and that is a bit wasteful. And then at small companies that want to move really quickly, sometimes you find that they're not quite doing everything. They're sort of checking boxes or trying to sneak their way onto the market. So I like the feeling of being at a middling company, somewhere that's between there where you have the horsepower and you have the process and the systems in place to make sure you're doing it, to feel like you're doing a really good job, you're developing a good device, but not so much that you feel like things are taking years and years and people are getting burnt out on that side of it.
So one thing that I sense from what you're saying is that sometimes either we're going too slow or we're going too fast, and you feel like, hey, we should probably take a bit more time to.
Yeah, I think, this is just me, but being in the middle of that makes me feel the most secure, because I think if I'm at a huge organization, I'm gonna feel anxious to move faster. But a really small one, I might be like, whoa, pump the brakes, it's not ready yet. That's why OpSense, I think, is being at a company that's in the hundreds of people that has a system in place but is still agile. That feels, still flexible, still we can go fast, and it doesn't have to go through 100 approvals above you to get something done. That feels good. It's fast enough, but it still feels safe. It still feels like you're doing your due diligence on the device. Yeah.
Do you see yourself working in the medtech world your entire career?
I've been asking myself that question for the last couple of years for sure. Because you see all these other industries, financial tech and the SaaS companies, the exciting stuff going on in the Bay, and just really exciting stuff happening in sustainable and renewable energies right now, battery companies, it's interesting stuff. And I will say it's appealing to look at those companies and think, oh man, I can do the same type of thing but move a lot faster because there's not all this regulatory red tape, because these devices aren't going inside the body. But I do think I will be in medtech for the rest of my career. If I had to bet on it, maybe it's a 70%, 30% type of thing. If the right opportunity comes, I'm not going to immediately dismiss it. But I like medtech. I think it gives you the best of both worlds. With you're working hard, developing, engineering, manufacturing, you're getting all the things that the tech industry gives you, and then there's this underlying part of it that you're doing good. Every once in a while you take a step back and you say, oh, look at these devices and look what they're doing, and you look at the patients and you think to yourself like, wow, what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis is making a difference. It might seem like I'm doing another Excel spreadsheet and I'm working through another engineering change order, or all these other mundane things that you have to do to function as a company in any industry. But in medtech, there's that thing at the end of the day, patients first, and getting to see, especially getting to meet patients that your device was used on, and see how big of a difference it made in their lives, or if it saved their life even, it makes you feel a deep sense of satisfaction. So that's medtech has that, and a lot of other industries don't have it.
Absolutely. Did you get a chance to meet a patient?
I have a couple of times. I don't believe I've met a patient at OpSense that's had an OptiWire or a SavvyWire used on them. I hope to soon. But at previous companies, I was able to meet a few patients who were using the devices, and specifically I was working on a manufacturing line for a VAD, for a ventricular assist device, which for this patient was used as a bridge to transplant. So their heart was failing and they needed to be put on a ventricular assist device to wait for the transplant to be ready. So it was literally sustaining them, on them all day, every day, pumping their blood for them until they were ready. And without this device, they may have not survived long enough to get a transplant. And meeting them, that was huge. Get goosebumps just thinking about it.
I don't know. I'm sure.
It's how thankful they are to you and to the company, and then seeing them meet the people who built their device, like getting to meet the team that put it together, and then
down to the operator guy.
The operator, yeah,
fantastic.
And then, they're like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. And so that kind of experience it's so unique to med device. I think it's something that you don't get to see it, you don't get to feel it in other industries, and that's probably what keeps me in medtech the most.
That's great. That's a really good share. I don't have any other question. Is there anything that you wanted to share about your path or about the future? How do you see the industry moving forward or recuperating from this crazy time that we're getting into?
Yeah, I think the future is bright. I think the challenges we're up against aren't as unique as they might feel sometimes, or as the sky is falling, the world is ending. Things are cyclical. We go through these problems every couple of decades globally. I think we'll get through them. I think coming out of COVID, we'll be stronger as a society. We'll be more balanced from a work life. We're working from home, working from the office perspective, and the worker, I think, is going to come out feeling more empowered and able to negotiate with their employers.
Not feeling like there's a barrier.
Yeah.
Things can be talked to, negotiated, and things are possible. Yeah.
Right. Feeling empowered to stand up for yourself as a worker and get what you deserve from benefits and compensation perspective. And then the other thing I would add is, I think coming into medtech is I would encourage it. It's such an interesting industry to be in. It's such a mix of all the great things of engineering, manufacturing, sales, and to that point, for myself personally, moving from an engineer and project manager into sales, business development, corporate development. When these opportunities arise for engineers, I think they should go for it. Even if you end up back as an engineer, as a manager, going through and actually having to make a sale, do some marketing work, do some product management work, or even some, if you're lucky enough, some corporate strategy stuff, it sets you up so well for the future of your career, because it makes you really, it makes you like a multi-tool. It makes you a well-rounded professional.
What's above and going on, not just into your bubble, like you can see more the big picture. Is that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. It's you're not just staying in your sector. Like, I'm a manufacturing person, operations. I'm a research and development. I'm clinical reg. When you get into other roles, and as the opportunities arise, you take them, and then you learn the whole business. So and then if you get back into one of those and you stay there long term, you've had the experience of seeing these other roles. And not only are you then going to consider those parts of the organization in your decisions, but I think it allows you to have empathy and understanding with your colleagues about what they struggle with. It's not just me versus you. Like, you understand.
Oh, we're in different departments. Sorry, we don't.
Yeah, exactly. It makes you less siloed as a professional if you get a little experience in different parts of the companies and the product development process and everything.
I heard in some companies, they call it, I forget the name, but the boss actually go down to the operator level and spend a day working as an operator. Of course, it's harder for an operator to go as the boss of the company, but in a bit less crazy term, would you think that it would be good to have like rotations in companies to go around? It would be, of course, really complicated, but would you see such a high benefit to actually share maybe just one day, or more longer?
Yeah, I do. I think I think that doing that where the boss comes down and works the floor for a while, that type of thing, but for everybody is it's something that companies should think more about. I think we always try to have a culture at companies of like I said, effective communication and cohesiveness, team effort. And I really do think the best way to do that is to walk a day in someone else's shoes. Even if that's not taking on their role, it's shadowing them, or it's having different functions, different teams present at an all hands meeting about what they're doing, what their challenges were, a project they worked on. The more you can cross-pollinate these groups within companies, the stronger the team is going to become from an education perspective, and also just from a team spirit
feeling,
perspective. Yeah.
Oh,
that's a good idea. And I honestly don't think I've seen. I'm sure there is out there, but I haven't seen sort of an inter-company rotational program with or between functions. Sometimes people jump facilities, but jumping functions a little bit. I think that's good for the company and the individual, and it keeps people around.
Yeah, and it's like, I understand better the struggle, or why the other department is having these challenges or frustrations sometimes from our department. And something I heard too is like a lot of people love, like you said, design. Like, I cannot wait to do the next the design of a medical device. But when there's an opportunity for sales, I heard from friends that they were really hesitant because they feel like you said, the dark world. Once you pass into that world, it's really hard to go back if ever. What about you? Did you feel like now you've been sucked into the dark world and you love it so much that you're gonna stay in that? Or
I can see myself staying in it. I can see myself moving back into the technical side at some point. I wouldn't be too afraid that it's impossible. Opportunities present themselves, and you can seek out opportunities that you don't think are possible. I think it's better for you to learn new skills and get into other roles than it is to just say, okay, I'm gonna get really, really good at this one role, and just I need to go up the ladder in this role. I think there's time and there's the opportunities throughout your whole career that you can do these lateral moves, and it might even accelerate your career, and it also might help you discover an area that you didn't think you would like.
Yeah,
if you asked me in college, are you going to be a sales guy? I would have said, no, I hate public speaking. Sales guys are not as smart as us engineers. I'm too logical for that. But I grew to enjoy it a lot. I grew to enjoy sales and marketing and that side of it. And with a technical background, it actually helps a lot because
you know what you're selling.
You sound like, and you do know what you're talking about a lot of the time. So it's I think people should jump and then try it out if they get the opportunity, especially if you're looking for a role. If you're really striving to be at the top end of a company, if someday you're like, I want to be, at the helm, maybe VP or C level at a med device company, it pays to have the perspective of the different roles and to be a well-rounded professional, to be a good, team leader at that level.
Thanks for the message of hope. I think that would reassure me. All right. Mm-hmm. Could you share what is your position and what does it mean? What do you do on a day-to-day basis?
Yes. So business development, I'm director of business development, but business development is a really general term. Like, it can mean a broad spectrum of things. At OpSense, it's evolved even a little bit over the last year and a half I've been here. But what it means for us is kind of two main things. It's sales and marketing for our OEM division, where we're selling our sensing technology to medical device OEMs and others, universities, labs, biosim companies, to incorporate the technology into their test setup systems, devices, etc. The other side is maybe what people would consider more corporate development, but it's essentially business partnerships, across the whole business. It's across the cardiovascular and the OEM side. That could look like distribution partnerships. It could look like M&A. It could look like licensing our technology. So that's my role. It's fairly broad, but again, small company, you kind of wear a lot of hats. And
how does your week look like? Is it like different every week, or how does it?
It is different every week to some degree. I think I'm always spending time supporting our key accounts on the OEM side, and I'm always dedicating time to doing outbound sales and marketing activities for OEM. But then on the corporate and strategy side of things, different opportunities arise, like I said, on the distribution partnership front or M&A or whatever, that we quickly need to evaluate, determine if a partnership is possible, if an opportunity is there. So that's kind of a sprint exercise, and then so in that way it changes, but in some ways it doesn't.
I see, it's not always the same people, but there is some cycles. Do you travel a lot? Do you, or is it more a phone or an email kind of job?
It's both. I've only ever worked at OpSense in this role post-COVID, so I don't know what it would have been like pre-COVID. And but right now, it's traveling once or twice a month as needed for outbound sales, marketing, or key account management. But it is a lot of Teams meetings. Number one, because our customer base is global. We work with everybody from East Asia to Europe to North America.
Does that mean that you have to be reachable any time of the day and night? Or?
To some degree, yeah. There's some weird meeting times. There's some weird meeting times. But also because internally, I'm in Minneapolis, and most of our team is in Quebec City. That's where 90+% of our employees are. And so the teams I work with in production and engineering, they're all in Quebec City. So I'm on Teams calls with them very often. I've gotten very good, as everybody in the world has, at Zoom and Teams and video conferencing effectively. And it's a blessing and a curse, because you're always on, and it's not always as effective as in-person meetings, but you can do stuff quick, and you can be in contact with somebody in Europe and that fast, which is quite nice.
Are you gonna learn French?
I asked that question to probably 8-10 people at OpSense in my first 2 months, and every single one of them said, don't even try. Like, it's not worth it. Not only is it not worth it because we all speak English too, but Quebec French is different than France French. Like, there's its own dialect, and it's
both are really hard. So
they said don't bother. Just we'll switch to English when you hop on the phone, and I still feel bad sometimes. I walk into the room and everybody has to change the language they're talking in.
It's the Quebec. It's the blessing and a curse as well, and but it's really beautiful province where
it is, and it feels nice to be exposed to another culture. Like, they're very close. They're only a couple hour drive from Maine and from the U.S., but it feels very French. They're very proud of their French heritage. Very proud of the city, and the city itself, Quebec City, has a rich history, and it's beautiful, and it has a really unique feeling. So I love working for a company there. Other than trying to get there, even now it's 1 or 2 layover to get there because it's a small airport.
I heard that there's no direct flight from Minnesota to Montreal. I heard, and I guess it's even worse to Minneapolis.
It's sparse. The flights. It's usually if I'm lucky, I'll get a flight from Minneapolis to Toronto, and Toronto to Quebec City. But I've done the double layover many times because there aren't as many flights. Airlines are kind of been ramping down number of flights so they get less cancellations and they have staffing issues. And also, the cross-border thing was a challenge with COVID, and Quebec City Airport is not a large airport, so there's limited flights out of there internationally for sure. But that's fine. We make it up there every couple months, and I do really try to get there every 1 or 2 months for sure, because there's an intangible value to being in person with your team. You can do as many Teams meetings as you want, but there's not those meeting after the meeting and go get a beer and type of conversations that build relationships. You don't build relationships over Teams. You build them when you're in person and you're walking down the hallway or you're at the water cooler or something like that between meetings.
Absolutely.
So that's what we need to not lose in the post-COVID world is the value, the intangibles, and the value of in-person meetings and traveling and just getting out there in the world.
It's to find a balance, not just work from home, but balance everything out.
That's right. Yeah.